Hi guys, welcome to another Gateway Youth. I just thought I recorded a message, but the record wasn't going, so I'll start again. I hope you had a good week at school, that you're all well, and I hope that that God's done something in your life this week, that you've remembered Him and His presence has been with you as you've been at school. And we talked last week, didn't we, about praying and about sort of bringing your feelings and your emotions to God. And I hope that you've done that this week, and you've had that chance to share your emotions and bring your emotions to Jesus. So, got another talk this week. I think it's another good one, an interesting one, and it's about, what do you think God's like? So it's about the person of God and what you think. What do you think He looks like? What do you think God looks like? And what does that mean for how you relate to God? And what are your expectations that you have from God? So enjoy the video, and I'll be back to talk afterwards. We were going to have Gateway Youth, a Gateway Youth Zoom call this week, and I had sort of mentioned that in last week's little video. But what we'll do instead, because it's Gateway Communion this Sunday, and it's Chris and Bev's first Sunday as the official pastors of the church, so I think it'd be really good if we all could join that. So please do come along, come to hear what they've got to say, and wave to each other on the video as well. And so I look forward to seeing you then, and then hopefully we can Zoom instead next week, if that's all right. Okay. Speak to you in a bit after the video.
Hey, we're here at Chicago's famous Millennium Park. Behind me is the iconic bean. When people think of Chicago, this is actually one of the images that they have. Talking about images, specifically thinking about our images of God, have you ever stopped to wonder where your image of God actually comes from? You know, those mental images that all of us have about God, if we were to stop and close our eyes, what would God actually look like? I mean, here's what I want you to do. I actually want you to literally close your eyes for a second and try and imagine God. Seriously, like wherever you're at right now, close your eyes and try and imagine what God must look like. Do it for like just a second. All right, you can open your eyes again. My hunch is this: God is probably like an old man, right? Your mental image of Him, maybe Him sitting on a throne with a big, long, white, flowing beard. Have you ever even stopped to think about where that image actually comes from for you? You know, I personally blame Michelangelo. Now, I don't have anything against him, like personally, per se. It's just that he has so greatly messed with our image of God. You know, in his historic Sistine Chapel painting called The Creation of Adam, Michelangelo masterfully created an image of God that I think honestly existed well before he ever picked up a brush. It's an image of God that continues to appear on the canvas of our minds to this very day. Now, the painting itself is, I think, a beautiful portrayal of God reaching out of the glory of heaven to a sort of half-hearted lounging Adam. God reaching out to His creation. That is a beautiful image. I don't have a problem with that. But my problem is with that actual image of God. It's just that He's so, old looking. I mean, He's old with this big, long, white, flowing beard like a elderly hipster, His face kind of weather-worn, one hand sort of reaching out to Adam, the other reaching back for a glass of Metamucil. I mean, it's this message that Michelangelo in his masterpiece was painting for all of us, and it's simply this: that God is old. Now, it's hard to imagine God for us any other way, because our understanding of time is so tied to our little brief existence that we have. We can't help but think of our lives with a beginning and a middle and an end, that things sort of start and then they finish. We don't know what eternal looks like, so we try and fill in the blanks with the closest thing we have to it, which is the oldest things we can think of, which for many of us is our grandpa. Now, grandpa obviously isn't eternal, but he's been around a lot longer than any of us have, and if God was here way before grandpa entered the scene, then God must be really, really old, like a sweet old man. And unlike other cultures around the world where people actually honor and respect the elderly, we here in America, we're afraid of it. Like we don't want anything to do with old, because in our culture, old is a bother. Old is a burden. It's out of touch, and the old is not what it used to be. And while it may be impossible for us to sort of pinpoint exactly where this image of an old God came from, it's not hard for us to figure out where it leads. See, what it leads us to is a God, if he's old, then he's past his prime. He's out of touch, over the hill, outdated, overrated, and unconnected to the world that we live in. And whether we realize it or not, we treat God like that. We treat God like he's a sweet old grandpa living in some retirement community somewhere in Boca Raton, Florida. And with that image in our mind of God, we can continue to sort of have the best of both worlds, honestly. Right? Listen, students, we don't have to worry about sort of the constant, daily, annoying presence of an active God in our lives as long as he's old. In fact, we don't even have to really think about God all that much if we don't want to. And the chance that we do want to actually talk with him, he's only a phone call away. We can sort of just call him every now and then when things get kind of tough or we need someone to talk to. So we can see him whenever we want, maybe like at Christmas or on Easter. You see how our God kind of becomes sort of like a grandpa. All right, now look, I know that some of this may seem like a bit extreme, right? But just think about this for a second. The longer we see God as just an old man, the more it begins to affect everything else we see. So what do? We lower our expectations and we sort of settle for a God who may have given us our first push, but who we passed up years and years ago. And if God is nothing more than just a sweet old man, then it changes how we see the Bible. I mean, the customs and culture of the Bible are, for lack of a better word, ancient. And even the language, it kind of reeks of oldness. You know, if thou doth partaketh in thine own folly, then thou shalt faileth thy Lord. I mean, it's honestly like reading Shakespeare your freshman year in high school and pretending that you like it, or even that you understand it. See, we do our best to sort of connect the dots, but there's just no getting around that if God's an old man, then the Bible is just an old book. Then stop and think about, our everyday struggles, what we face on a daily basis. As long as God is just an old man, then our struggles are really something that he just doesn't understand. God obviously can't understand the sort of complexities of our everyday life, of the internet. God couldn't possibly comprehend the complexity of the stuff that we struggle with there. He's possibly just too nice and old to understand the anger that rages beneath the surface of some of our lives, if we're being really honest. God's views on sexuality may seem so old-fashioned that it's impossible for him to understand what we actually face on a daily basis, or to accept us exactly as we are today, especially after all that we've done. See, the longer we keep God confined to our concept of time, the older and older and older he gets. Ultimately, we can't help but keep thinking of God in terms of our limited and finite reality, but deep down, I know, deep down, our hope is that he actually is a supreme being who is above all this and has power over all this and can actually save us from all this. That he actually is bigger and above and beyond and before us and this whole world. The truth that existed long before us and before this world, before anything even existed, is that there was God. That means that even before there was time, there was God. That he existed outside of anything we could ever imagine or hope for, and that he still does. So what if there's a better framework for God? A better word other than just old? What if a better word for God is timeless? See, if God were limited to our understanding of time, then like all things in the universe, he would be aging, deteriorating, dying. He couldn't be the same today as he was yesterday or millions and millions of years ago for that matter. And he wouldn't be the same tomorrow as he is today. If he were subject to time, then he would change with time. But if time were something that God was not actually bound to, well, then that actually could change everything, including our perception of him. Because that means that God is just as capable, just as powerful, just as ready to do amazing things in our lives and in our world today as he has done throughout history. What if God is still moving in and around and among us as he always has? What if God has just as much love and interest in you and your life today as he did the lives of Moses and King David and Peter and, well, your grandpa for that matter? What if our lives were less about following God, but rather more about trying to keep up with a God who is active and dynamic and on the move right now, today, in your life, just as he's always been. A God who is and was and will forever be above and beyond time, ageless from generation to generation. You know, there's a passage in the Bible that says this about our ageless God. That earth and sky, what we see around us, will wear out, but not you. They become threadbare like an old coat. You, God, you fold them up like a worn out cloak and lay them away on the shelf. But you'll stay the same year after year. You'll never fade. You'll never wear out. Thank God. I thank God that he's not bound to my understanding of time. That he's not just the old man that I imagine in my head. Thank God that he exists outside of our little constructs that we've created for him, and yet he still chooses to step into our everyday lives every day. And he brings with him, like he always has, a power that is perfect and complete, not growing or fading away or diminishing, but exactly what we need right now, today.
Great. I hope you enjoyed that video and found that interesting, and that's made you think a bit about how you see God. And so we've got some questions to talk about post that. I had planned to do a Zoom catch up with you guys, but I think I've already explained that in the intro that it's communion today for church. So please come along to communion instead, and we can kind of wave and say hi to each other there and say hi to the whole church. It'd be really exciting to be there for Chris and Bev's first official communion as pastors and the church. So what do you think about what God looks like? How do you picture God to be? And why do you think that is? That's the first question. Before you they started talking about him as an old man, what would be your thought about what God looks like? And then I was going to go on and say, well, hopefully, perhaps you think of God in a different way. Hopefully you think about the person of Jesus as well, because God, as revealed to us, is revealed to us in Christ, in Jesus. So we can think about Jesus walking the earth, and that's what God looks like. But I guess when we think about God the Father, perhaps we think about the old man, or perhaps you don't. So why do we have that concept of the old man? Is it the famous paintings, or is it for other reasons? So what popular image of God do you think about when you're thinking about God? And then does that change how you think about God and what you think he can do in your life? Does that mean that sometimes your picture of God in your mind means that he doesn't understand the struggle that you go under, or he can't understand the issues that relate to you in your generation? If you think about your granddad, I know I always used to. I mean, my grandparents grew up during the war, in a time when my grandma was born, there was hardly any cars on the road, for instance. So when I thought about my grandma, she's been through a lot of change, but she lived in a completely different generation to the one I lived in, and with completely different things going on, especially when she was younger. And is that how you see God, that he can't really relate to your situation, or not? Obviously, we at the church, we believe that God can relate to you, and he knows you, and he understands the world. He made the world, and he understands what's happening today as well as what happened yesterday and any other day. So he's timeless, and that's what the guy in the video said. He's ancient, but he's not old, and he's timeless. So thinking about that and thinking that God can impact your life, that he's interested in your life, in your generation, in you this time now, in the now. What's one area that you want God to show up in your life right now? Think about that. So I don't know what your perception of God was before, but I hope this video and this Switch talk can help you to begin to change your perception of God and know that he is the same yesterday, today and forever, and that he's actively involved in your life. So I hope that you have a great week. Hope to see you later, and obviously feel free to join send any messages on WhatsApp, and be great to speak to you next week on a Zoom call. All right, see you guys. Bye.